Welcome to the Tea Grannies. I'm Elise.
And I'm Maria. Today we're here to talk about how to approach your edit. This episode will focus on some different editing strategies and organizations. So pour yourself a cup of tea and let's get started.
So getting to the end of your story, or of your first draft maybe, is one of the hardest parts of writing, the first draft. I think some people struggle with the beginning. I've never had that problem. The beginning has always come very easily for me. And then some people have kind of a saggy middle issue where they're just kind of meandering and don't know what they're doing. And if I don't plot enough, yes, I have that issue too. But the ending is everything's all coming together. It's all culminating into this final grand thing, and you want it to be perfect. You want to do it justice. I think that's a lot of people get stuck on the ending, on trying to write it and feeling like it's just either they don't want to or they're scared to because they're afraid that they won't do the story justice after putting all of this work into it and all of this effort. Or maybe you've been writing the story for so long and you're scared to finish it and then go back and have to change things because maybe you mess up the things that you change. And then what if you can't go back and fix it again, or you don't know how, or you change it so much that all of a sudden it's a different story and you don't know where you're going anymore. So yeah, the self-doubt is real. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that.
The beauty of editing is you can always change things. So if you do go through your edit and then you come back and read it, you're like, oh, I made a mistake, or I forgot that I changed my character's eye color or whatever.
Whoopsie.
All of that can be fixed.
Yeah.
All of it can be fixed.
Yeah.
So it's most important not to be too hard on yourself. And you will do your story justice in your own way. And that's also what feedback is for. So if you write to the end and you think, oh, I didn't do a very good job of that, you get your feedback from your beta readers, and then you can edit that ending again. You could always fix that. The ending is the easiest part to fix because you've done all the hard work already.
Yeah, I find that that daunting feeling when you're kind of approaching that, I don't know, 3/4 or just past the 3/4 mark. It's so interesting because I think for me, it's often I want to do this justice. I want it to be perfect. I don't want to write something that sucks, but that's completely against the entire philosophy that I've been working with for the first 3/4 of the story of just get it out there, just get it done. You can fix it later. The ending is the same. Mm-hmm. Just get it out there, get some version of it done, get your ideas on the page, and you can fix it later. That's the whole point of the editing process, which is what we're here to talk about today. So when you hit that point, you have done all of that. You've been through the terrifying imposter syndrome and self-doubt, and you have talked yourself in and out of your story over and over and over again. But you finally managed to make it to the end. You have a full draft. Congratulations. It's time to edit your book. But how do you know where to start? How do you know if you're even ready to start editing, or if you should be fixing some big picture stuff and rewriting instead? And that might seem like a dumb question, or isn't it obvious? You have a complete story, you've got a completed draft, so you must be ready. But that hasn't been my experience, and I don't think it's been Maria's experience either. It really depends. No. Yeah, it really depends on the draft. It really depends on a lot of the feelings you have around the draft. And so for me, and I think possibly for you, once I have a full story, I've written out my first kind of crack at the ending, I take space from it. I put it away. I don't literally put it in a drawer, but that's a helpful analogy. I put it in a drawer and I lock the drawer and I don't think about it for at least 2 weeks, but at this point it's been anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months to now I think I'm 6 months away from one of my drafts. So
I'm about that for one of mine too, 6 months away from it. I'm a couple months away from working on it again.
Yeah.
But the shortest amount of time I take away is about a month.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's healthy and probably a really good marker, because like we talked about in our last episode a little bit, it's just so helpful to take space from what you've written because you get so attached, you get so invested in this huge thing, and you put all these hours into it, and you want it to be perfect, but you know that it's not. And that's why we're talking about editing. So taking that space, it gives you that distance. It lets you detach yourself from those attached emotions and just kind of relax and let go. And this can help so much with everything from basic clarity to being able to kill your darlings, because now you can be hopefully a little bit more objective. Yeah. So taking a break, that's my first step. And then before I sit down to even touch my manuscript, assuming that I don't already have some ideas of what I want to change, because sometimes that happens, I get to the end and along the way I change something and it's like, okay, now I need to go back and adjust this here and adjust that there. So I'll take care of those first. But if I don't have any of those and it's just like, okay, I have my full draft, now I need to sit down and fix it and I don't know where to start, I get back into it with a simple read through. And my number one rule when I'm doing that is to sit on my hands. And that's something I heard from an editor once of, if you have time with a contract, the first thing you do is you do a first pass, you read through the manuscript you're supposed to edit, and you don't touch anything. But that doesn't mean you can't take notes along the way. So yes, I'll take notes. Yes, I'll make little notations or comments of, ooh, flag this, ooh, this needs to be adjusted because of this, but I'm not actually digging in and starting typing and fixing anything because I don't want to get into that nitty gritty here. I don't want to get distracted with copy edits. I want to just get an idea of the full picture. How does it all come together? How are my character arcs doing? How is my plot doing? Do I have some subplots that just kind of don't fit? And I find it's easiest to identify those when I've come back from a break and I'm just doing a whole read through. And then once that is done, I try to organize my edits into the categories that make sense. So this last time I was working with multiple POVs, point of views, and I did it by character. So I arranged my edits under a heading of my character's name and then chronologically based on chapter order. But the order that you do your edits in could be very different depending on where you're at and what you prefer and what your story needs. And then I'm ready to begin implementing those edits to try and get a draft ready for feedback from people, because there's no way this is final draft business at this point. I need people to keep, I need people to keep giving me feedback throughout the editing process. Like, it's not just a one and done. First draft, everyone read it. Okay, take that feedback, fix it. Now it's good. I do at least 2 rounds of feedback on a complete draft. And if I can do 3, that's ideal. And I try to mix it up and have different people look at it because different people are going to catch different things.
Mm-hmm. I have a very similar process. So I always take the break a month, sometimes longer, depending on what's going on in my life. And then I go through it, like from beginning to end as a reader. I actually don't even make notes in the doc. I only allow myself to make a list of notes for big things. I don't let myself touch anything small because if I notice it, I'm sure I'll notice it again. It's very rare that you're going to skip like a spelling mistake or something. And so then I kind of make editing list. And after I've read it, like I sit on that for a couple days too and think about, okay, so these are the edits I've come up with so far. This is what I liked and this is what I didn't like about my story when I read it through. And then I try to visualize on it to be in its completed form. And so if the story I'm visualizing is so different than the draft, which is what's happening to me with the one that I haven't come back to yet, then I know that needs a rewrite, not an edit. And then in the case of my last project, it really just needed to be bulked up and edited. It didn't have any major changes. Like the first chapter and the last chapter have been like stylistically cleaned up and stuff, but they're the same. Everything that happens is the same as it was in the first go around. So that just really depends on your story. And it depends, my earlier stories needed a lot more rounds of that exact thing. But now it takes me kind of one round. I go, okay, this is what I need to do with this. So then I kind of get into my pre-editing. So Elise we talked about style sheets last time, and that's something I'm trying to get into. I always start a style sheet and then it just kind of sits there. So I usually start my style sheet and then abandon it. I mean, whatever works for you. And usually during the first draft, I've started at some point when I was procrastinating, I've started a Pinterest board for inspiration. So I usually go back to the Pinterest board and kind of scroll through it and like get some visuals for what I want to do. And then I make a editing schedule, everybody's favorite thing. So I do this because it's very easy to put editing off because it is intimidating to do, even once you've started. I make a deadline, and roughly I would say I can edit about a chapter a day pretty comfortably. So 30 chapter manuscript, I can finish that edit in about a month, and then it's ready to go out for feedback. Things you have to remember when you're editing is it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Do not rush through your edits just for the sake of getting it done.
Yeah, and do not rush through your edits for the sake of the deadline either.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, especially if it's a self-imposed deadline. Like there's moving the deadline because you've been slacking, and that's also fine. And then there's moving the deadline because you've got more to do than you first thought, and that's also fine. Sometimes
absolutely. You're going to pick things up along the way. Like you might be editing a section and change something and realize, oh, that affects this other thing down the road or previous, and then you have to go back and fix that. So it's constantly moving the puzzle pieces and trying to keep track of them. But then once you've been through kind of a first round of edits, yes, you've been moving the puzzle pieces around. So you need that feedback in order for people to catch the things that maybe you forgot to note down, forgot that you changed, didn't realize this affects that. That's where it all kind of ties together. And then I think probably the biggest tool that I use is, like you said, the style sheet. And I do a very similar thing where I started at the beginning and then I abandon it because it's like writing is way more fun when I don't have to think about the details. And then I come back to it when I have that finished draft or when I'm procrastinating at the 3/4 mark and I don't want to write and I'd rather just,
That's a good idea. I should try that next time when I'm procrastinating. Be like, if you're going to not write your story, you need to work on the style sheet and then watch me pound out like 1,000 words of actual writing just to avoid the style sheet.
It's all
homework.
Brain tricks. All of it is brain tricks.
Whatever
that sounds like a really good strategy. But it is a really useful tool once, like at whatever point it becomes useful to you. It doesn't have to be right away. But when you get into your editing or you're thinking about starting those edits, that is where I would start. That's kind of how I get my brain into that zone, into that mode. It's like, okay, here are all the details I need to think about. And then I feel like I'm ready to edit. I'm ready to think about that. But it's basically just your tool to keep consistent and organized as you categorize your world. So if you're going through and realize these characters' names are too similar and they show up in the same scene a lot, you change the one name, pop it in the style sheet, get the right spelling right away, and then you can do a search, a find and replace later and take care of those nitty-gritty things at another time. And you don't need to be thinking about consistency things like whether you're using Canadian or American English spelling or whether your punctuation is a certain way or not. Like at this stage in the editing process, that's copy edit stuff. That's not something you need to put your energy into because it could change along the way and it's just not important. But what I do use that for kind of right at the start, if I haven't already done so, and like I said, if I'm procrastinating writing the ending, I might go through and collect all of the character descriptions that I have. So I'll search for the names of my characters for the very first time they show up and see, okay, how did I describe this person? Because it's really, really handy to have those listed in that style sheet as I'm doing the edits, because then I'm catching, oh, I changed their eye color halfway through or whatever it is, like I described the wrong thing. It happens way more often than you might think. And then as I'm doing that, I also try to have 2 or 3 people in mind who I'm planning to request a read through and high level feedback from when I'm done. And that's why it's helpful to set that deadline, to have that schedule, because like I can poke those people a couple weeks ahead of time and say, hey, I'm in edits. Are you interested in beta reading for me or whatever it is, however I want to word that. And then I'm giving them a heads up. And if I have that deadline, I can say, this is when I'm expecting to be done. Do you have time and space at that time? Or when is your schedule free for this? And then that's my deadline. Because people have lives and it's a pretty big ask to get them to read an entire story and tell you whether they love or hate it and why. Yes, that's a big job. So I try to use the people in my life in the best way possible so that they don't hate me. And so far it's worked out okay. So Yeah. Those are some of the things that I find the most helpful to have done before I start. I know, Maria, you have a few more, so let's hop on over to yours.
Yeah, so I usually don't do a deep dive edit until I have feedback
Okay.
already. And this is partly because I write skinny, right?
Right.
So I usually have to
Mm-hmm.
add. So I usually do that first read through. I make some notes. I fix like the glaringly wrong
Yeah.
things. And then I usually send it for feedback. Like I sent this last project out for feedback when it was like 57,000 words.
Right.
And then my actual end goal was going to be like
That's
80,000.
right.
But I was like, I need to know what more needs to be
Mm-hmm.
done before I start
Mm-hmm.
writing random scenes that maybe don't belong.
Fair.
So when I talk about my editing process, I always have feedback already. And sometimes this is feedback from like our monthly workshops. So like the next story that I'm going to basically do a overhaul on, I'm still going to look at the feedback I got and just see like what hit with the readers and what didn't. So that's good.
Yeah.
And then I like having the feedback from like at least two beta readers. Usually go for two. Sometimes it's just you in the first
Why
round.
not?
It just
Yeah.
depends. Depends. Yeah. So I have feedback from at least one reader. I have a list of big picture edits, and then I have a list of small things that I'd like to maybe add or just double check for consistency. And then I compile all the feedback into one document. And usually, when I send my draft out for feedback, I have a list of questions for the beta readers.
Yeah.
So I put them all in the same doc so that I can refer to the feedback as a whole. And then I give myself another deadline for when it needs to go back out to beta readers. And then I go with the schedule that I already mentioned, which is roughly a chapter a day. Sometimes I do more. It just depends. Some days I don't do any because like life, day job, and
Yep.
things like that. So I kind of give myself like, if I'm like, okay, I have 30 chapters,
Mm-hmm.
I could do a chapter a day, but there, I'm going to need some leeway, give myself maybe 40, 45 days or
Sure.
whatever. And that's all I have before I start. Most importantly is the lists, which we're going to jump into next.
Yes, lists and lists. Style sheets are one kind of list, but I think we're talking about editing lists now, which is another thing entirely, which is maybe a little bit scarier. Style sheets are kind of rules and already established things. Editing lists, that's where you actually have to think. Oh, that sounds exhausting. Okay, so your edit list is going to be, believe it or not, is going to be your best friend as you start fixing up your draft. Because like we said before, you've got all these puzzle pieces, you've got all these moving parts, and if you don't start writing them down, it's really easy to lose track of them or forget that you changed a little thing there that affects everything else, or you added this little, like I'll do this sometimes where I add a little detail in towards the earlier part of the story, and then I want to use it in foreshadowing and with different other things. As like, okay, I have to add these little lines here and there, and it just becomes this super intricate little game that you play. So the way that I keep track of it is with my master list. And I also use that to keep me on track because I've got these big picture things that I need to focus on. And I don't want to start getting distracted by the little pesky copy edits when I haven't even looked at the overall structure of the story and whether these scenes should even exist or not. Because if I start editing the phrasing of this one scene because, it could be worded better for the pacing or whatever it is, and then I come back through and I remove the scene entirely, I've just wasted so much time, and I'm always complaining about how little time I have. So work smarter, not harder. And
Exactly.
yeah, an edit list will help you do that. And I tend to organize mine, like I said, with my characters and POVs and all of that, but also, as we talked about in the last episode, the stages of editing, which starts with the high level and moves down to the smaller pieces. I organize my edit list based on that, essentially. So I focus on my biggest big picture stuff first, and I work through that as much as I can. And then if I'm getting stuck or if I feel like I've cleaned all that up as best as I can, then I move down to some more nitty gritty before sending it for feedback again.
Yeah, and so when I write from multiple point of views, I still edit in chapter order because
Sure.
that's just what works for my
Yeah.
brain. So after I've done the initial, this is way after I've got everything ready to go, I do another read through, and that's how I make my edit list. So I kind of go chapter by chapter, and I'll have my list of like chapter one, like just check language or do a stylistic edit on my chapter 1, say, and then chapter 2, like I'm in another character's point of view. I have to fix this and this, and then I kind of roll through that, and I do them chapter by chapter, and then I also do a list of scenes that need to be written, and this usually comes to me like when I'm prepping for the edit. I'm like, okay, I need about 10 more new scenes, and I'm going to put them in their own doc, and I have like new scenes, and I write them kind of there, and then I kind of find out where I'm going to put them. I'm starting to realize like maybe my process sounds really disorganized, but it's like really works for me. But yes, like I also throw in my editing list things like foreshadowing. But a lot of the time that stuff comes just naturally when I'm working on the chapter. I'm like, ooh, this is a good spot to foreshadow this. So I try not to worry too much if I don't have a lot of that in my editing list. Like it's going to come as I'm working on the project. But yeah, it is easiest to do it in chapter order for me. And I also, when I get stuck or when I'm not sure what I'm going to do, I will either talk to Elise or like my husband or someone about my story. And it usually helps me puzzle out what needs fixing or what more needs to happen. And like when I sent my last project out and I got it back, like I had all the beta readers asking for more of the romance and like more from my male character's point of view. So it's like, whoa, that's a lot. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to write all this? Anyway, I just added like, I don't know, 10 more chapters. It's fine. But it was like, I wrote those scenes, like first draft scenes, and I popped them in there because that would be something I would edit after I got feedback on this round. Yep. So there's usually multiple rounds. Like I don't know anybody that's done a first draft and gotten feedback and then just fixed it and then just been done. Like I've never but anyway, so back to my lists. I got a little sidetracked there. So I have my edit list with the big picture edits, and then I have like my specific chapters, what needs to be fixed in each specific chapter. And then I have my new scenes doc where I number the scenes, and I usually do a little what the scene is going to be, and then I work on it when I feel like working on it. And then I keep all the feedback from my beta readers, and that's what I usually have before I get started.
Yeah, it sounds, I mean, you said it sounded disorganized, but to me it's like, that sounds way more organized than me. Okay.
My brain just sometimes feels all over the map. And like also just like for so everybody knows I write in Scrivener, so it's really easy for me to go back and forth between docs. Like I don't have to have multiple like Word docs or anything. Yeah. I've tried Google Docs and stuff. I like it for like our podcast stuff, and like we write our like book reviews and stuff in there. But for my actual stories, like I've really enjoyed using Scrivener because it helps me stay pretty organized. And I have like on the left side is like a list of everything, like so all my chapters, and then I have like different binders or whatever for like brainstorming or edits. Like I have a whole thing for edits, and then there's like a drop down with like 6 different docs there, and that's been super helpful. And there's also a spot on the right hand side, at least the way I have it set up for mine, where you can make little notes for yourself. And so I do that. That's where I put my edits for the chapter. Sometimes like when I sit down to work on say chapter 6, so I look at my edit doc, I'm like, oh, I got to do this. And I put that in the little notes so I can just kind of refer back to my little notes as I'm going through the chapter without swapping too much. It's little things like that that make it a little more streamlined for me.
Yep. Yeah, no, if you struggle with organizing your work and keeping track of your files and stuff, or you're really into organization and that's important to you,
like me,
and we love you for it, then I think Scrivener is a really good option. I find organizing my files in Google Docs or on my computer it works really well for me, so I'm not willing to pay for it, but it's not a huge expense. It's actually fairly easy to find coupons for it. Yeah. So yeah,
especially if you win NaNoWriMo, you get like half price or whatever, which is how I got mine.
Yep, Nano's a great way to do that. So yeah, organizing your edits, even like if you're fine with the drafting stage and you can keep organized, whatever. But for organizing yourself for the editing stage, it sounds like a really useful tool, and I can see how it would be a huge benefit. I know that you've talked about how you've you've used it where like we've been chatting to brainstorm something out and you're like, oh, that's good. So you'll copy paste something that I said or that we were talking about into your Scrivener so just to keep it so that you don't have to scroll back up through the messages, right?
Yes.
So.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It works really well. And sometimes I'm looking at my edits and I start laughing. So it's like right out of our conversation. So like without context, it makes no sense. Like to the outsider, they'd be like, what the heck are they talking about? But it makes sense for us. But and that's what matters.
That's the best part about brainstorming. Yeah. And yeah, I'll never complain about brainstorming. I know you say like, usually you'll verbal process with me and like I put it all on Elise. Wow, such a chore. But it's like, no, that's my favorite part. That's it's what makes things fun.
You need to brainstorm. That's why the thing is that so many people think that writing is a solitary thing, and the actual like writing of it actually it is like when you're writing, but to figure out your story and the edits and the beta reading, like you actually need a little community of people to do that with. I mean, I talk to my husband sometimes about what I'm going to do and he goes, yeah, like that sounds good. But like he hasn't been reading my story. So like, and he's going to tell me everything sounds good.
Exactly.
So I need someone who's actually going to read it or who reads that genre and I can like bounce ideas off them. Like my husband reads like biographies and like World War II stuff. So he's not a great help for fantasy back and forth. Although he's pretty good when I'm like, do you think someone would bleed a lot if you did this? And he'll be like help with that. The nitty gritty, gross details.
Yep. You need different people for different brainstorming purposes. So
true. So true. We need a doctor friend, and then we could really nail those. Yeah.
Maybe I can find maybe I can find a nurse friend or something that would work as well.
You're like, how much would you bleed?
Yeah. You were would this kill you? I'm asking for a friend.
Ask you. Yeah, I'm not planning anything.
God no. Oh man.
Oh gosh.
But yeah,
we're off topic again.
Well, no, we're still off topic. The next topic was brainstorming, so we're good.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, because brainstorming, I will never complain about it because it's saved my ass so many times. Oh my goodness. Talking out big edits, like when I'm at that beginning stages of okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I make the fixes that I know I want to make, and then it's like okay, I know I need to fix this thing, but I don't know how to do it effectively. And then I'm like, Mariah, help me. Help me. And I'll usually send you like an all caps message of I'm dying, give me your brain or something. And then
there's a lot of drama in our
so
messages.
Much drama.
Like if people could see our messages, they'd be like, wow. Dramatic match.
Wow.
But it does help so much to have someone to brainstorm with. Like it'll make a huge difference. You got to find a brainstorming buddy. It's probably the same person as your accountability buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A pattern.
Yeah, I know we've helped each other out on way more than one occasion, and that's not going to stop because like like I said, fixing the word choice in a paragraph, it's not going to help you too much if you have to go back and then delete the paragraph. So we figure out whether we need to delete the paragraph first, and we do that together. Exactly. And that's what brainstorming is for.
And there's some, like, I mean, some people will do two different editing passes. Like they'll do one for the big picture stuff and then one for like a stylistic. That seems like I just can't hold myself back from doing the stylistic at the same time. So it doesn't work for me to do two separate edits. So I do one edit.
Okay.
And I usually will go through the chapter before I start. I do a lot of reading in my editing. As I'm saying it out loud. So I read it through and then I go, okay, here's the big thing. I fix the big thing. And then I go through it again and I add some details. The other one that's good too, this is where people get stuck on stylistic. You're not sure if it sounds good. Read it out loud.
Yep.
You will find the word that doesn't fit if you just read it out loud. Be like, okay, that sounds bad. And then you can fix it. And that's a huge help. So like when I'm editing, my husband can hear me mumbling sometimes and he knows I'm just reading things out loud.
It helps a lot. Helpful. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then, the other thing when you're editing, like, I mean, if you do like what I do and you do everything at once, it can be kind of overwhelming. But that's why you have your edit list. So follow your edit list. It's very tempting to jump ahead sometimes and just like, oh, well, I know I have to fix this in chapter 20 now. Well, just go to your edit list and make a note for chapter 20 and go back to where you were. Because skipping ahead, I mean, maybe it works. Like everybody has a different system. I'm sure there's people that are good at just picking a chapter and like rolling with it. But for me, it makes the story feel not cohesive. So to make it feel cohesive, I got to do it in order so that it all makes sense. And then a lot of time, like when I was writing dual point of views, like I did it like twice, like in 2 editing passes where I had like the wrong time jump from one character to another, or you know, I needed another scene to make it flow properly. And that's the other reason you should try and edit in chronological order, because you're going to find the stuff that doesn't fit like that. And then the last, I think we've spoken about this before, when you're working on your ending, when it comes to your first draft, you can just, you know, if you're like me, you just write until you feel like it's over. That's the worst for me. But when you're editing, you should know your ending, and then you can write towards it. It's okay if you're changing that ending from your last draft. Of course, you can always change it. But you don't want to be halfway through your edit and then change your ending so drastically that you got to go back and start your edit again. And that's, if you're doing that, then maybe you need a little more feedback, or you need to go through it more thoroughly before you start actually getting into the edits, because you're just creating work for yourself. And if you're not sure how to end it and you haven't gotten feedback yet, then write the ending that comes like intuitively to you, to the characters, and then leave it there and wait for feedback. And then you'll be able to figure out, if you haven't written the ending, you're not going to be able to fix the ending, because you got to write it out and see how it works. And if you're like most writers, when you start writing it, it will start coming to you as you're writing usually. And then you can get to the end, and then you can go back and add your foreshadowing. That's the other thing. If you won't write the end, you can't go back and do all your foreshadowing and all that stuff that you want to do during your edit. So
when I think I've said this before, when I was writing Roots of Blood, I wrote like 30,000 words and then axed them. And then I did it again, because the ending that I wrote, I thought it was where I wanted to go. But once I got there, once I'd written it out, it's like, oh, this doesn't work. Not because anything was necessarily specifically wrong with it, but it did not fit with the rest of the story, or it wasn't cohesive, or the character arc didn't slide into that space naturally, or whatever. I was jamming too much into too short of a section. There were all sorts of issues before I found the ending that worked. So know your ending before you get there, ideally. That will save you a whole lot of trouble. Ideally. You never know, right? But you can't edit what you don't have. So if you're struggling with it, just write it out, even if it feels silly or whatever, because that feedback that you can get on it will help you decide, why is it silly? Why doesn't it fit? Maybe that's the thing that you need to get it done. So and then beyond that, I don't know, we've covered the big picture stuff, so I'll just go back to what I keep saying. Remember to leave the nitpicks till the very end. Don't get bogged down with your copy edits. Don't get bogged down with your grammar and your nitpicking on scenes that might change entirely with a more drastic edit. Or if you decide you need to rewrite a chapter. I have this one chapter in my current work in progress that I probably will have to remove, but I've edited it like 3 or 4 times, and I put a lot of work into it, but it actually is just a stupid, sucky chapter that should come out. So don't be stubborn like me. If you jump ahead in the editing process and try to do all that little nitpicky stuff, you're creating more work for yourself. And
way more.
Don't need to do that. Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And like, please finish your first draft before you do any editing. This is a tough one for new writers, especially. You want to like, oh, I'll just go fix this and then I'll carry on. And we did talk about this in our first drafts episode, so I'm not going to like go crazy on it. But you don't want to, waste all this time fixing things that will not be useful by the time you get to the end. So first draft has to be done all the way to the end before you edit. This is so important. And again, the foreshadowing, like, yeah, you do get a little bit done in your first draft, but the real work for that happens in the editing stage. Like when you're reading a book and you're like, you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, you like realize all the foreshadowing and you're like, wow, like they didn't do that the first time.
No.
That was later. No. So if you want to be that good and want to get that reaction, you gotta do it editing stages. So you have to have your ending or know your villain or whatever it takes for you to get that in there. You want to nail that. When you're done your draft, you want to nail it.
Write that first draft out, fly by the seat of your pants, do that, and then second draft is all about making it look like you did it all on purpose in the first place. So
we'll talk a little about how our drafts went for our most recent projects, and that way you guys can get an idea of what the process looked like word count wise, because this is always kind of a tough one. You know, some people write more lengthy first drafts and some people don't. So you'll see the difference between me and Lisa's here.
Yeah. And I think we've touched on this a little bit in previous episodes between like overwriting or writing a lot of words and having to cut back versus skinny drafts having to bulk it up because you're not quite meeting your genre word count that you're aiming for. So I am the wordy AF. That is me. That is my problem. I have to kill darlings more than probably anyone else, and maybe I don't kill them enough. That's probably true. And then Maria's the opposite. She does the skinny draft. So you'll see the comparison pretty quick here. My first draft of my the latest project that I have that's in the editing phase, I was aiming for 100,000 words. And this should be a brain trick for me by now. It should be like, okay, I have to say about like 20,000 words over what I'm aiming for because it's going to be, and yeah, sure enough, aiming for 100,000. Yeah, 120,000. Overshot way too far. So, in my second draft, I've brought it down to 110,000 and I'm pretty sure it's there to stay. It's not getting any shorter than that. That's how long it wants to be. So, I've gotten
that's a good word
count. It's for epic fantasy. It's fine. I've gotten over it.
Yeah,
I have not gotten over
really
it.
Good.
I never get over it. And at this point, like I've done a couple rounds of editing on it already. I've had a couple rounds of feedback, so I have some bigger pieces to fix, like that entire chapter that I was talking about that should just be axed or rewritten or whatever, because it's just a major yawner and I'm not making it interesting. And then some smaller little plot details from kind of someone went through and read, and this is kind of how I know when I'm getting there, I'm getting to the right place, when I have a beta reader that comes through and they don't point out any big problems. They're pointing out little things like, I don't really understand this phrase here, or like little details that I didn't describe quite enough. And then it's like, okay, we're getting there. We are very close to the end. So I know I'm close. I'm very close. But yeah, I think I'll need one more major pass for big picture, and then I can start reading it out loud for that stylistic and copy edit. Yay! The worst part.
And I'm going to talk about the same project I've already talked about a bit, where the first draft was 57,000 words. Second draft was 62,000 words. And the third draft is 77,000 words. And then I think by the time I sent it out for copy edit, it was 79,000. And that had two major editing passes. It went out to beta readers 2 separate times, and Elise got it a third time because she's special. And now she's got it for copy edit, and then it's going to be ready to query, hopefully. And I also had my query and synopsis workshopped once too. So don't forget that step either when you get a little further along. If you've done all this work on your draft to get it workshopped and edited, make sure you do the same for your query and your synopsis. That's a very important step.
Yeah.
But so that was you can see I'm a very skinny first draft writer. I'd say most of my first drafts are about 50,000 words, and then most of my end projects are about 80,000 words. So I almost double my word count.
Wow.
When I'm done. Yeah. And it's because when I just want to get the story out and I like leave all the details for later. So a lot of that bulking up is like new scenes or short added scenes, and a lot of it's setting in that too, because I really just kind of whip through my first draft and get it out. But yeah, everybody has a different process.
Yep.
I'm not sure what's easier to cut or to add. Like, I feel like either way you're writing the words.
Yep. I think
I'll probably never write 120,000 words in a draft.
Maybe one day. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize that I had read it. I'll be reading it for the 4th time with the copy edit. I did not quite realize that. That's really interesting to me. It makes me feel a little bit better because, like, when I send you my drafts, because they're usually longer, I always feel bad because, like, okay, we're swapping, but I feel like it's unbalanced because you read more words every time. But so
you get mine an extra time.
I get yours an extra time. I don't send mine out as many times because I don't know, my process is a little bit different. So you only beta read it maybe twice, whereas I'm doing it 4 times. So it's even. It's all good. Nice. It's fine. Oh man,
whatever's fair. Yep. It works for us, and everyone's process is different. Like that's, I used to look up like how to edit, like how to this, how to that, and none of that stuff worked for me. I really just had to do trial and error until I figured out what worked for me. And I did an entire edit on like another project, my first writing project, like a couple of times before I found any success with my method. And that was in the last big project I did. I was like, oh, okay, this is what's going to work for me.
This is how it goes.
So it took a while. So don't feel bad if you don't nail it first go or 10th go.
And I think that's why we're not calling this episode How To. It's not a how-to episode. We're not telling you what to do. We're telling you what worked for us and kind of the strategies that we kind of picked up along the way.
Yeah.
But everyone's going to want a different mix of those, and you get to pick and choose. Yeah. And I think that's beautiful. That brings us to the end of this discussion. I think we could probably narrow the episode down into 2 biggest takeaways, or at least the 2 biggest for me, are lists and friends. And that kind of encompasses all the things that we talked about. So keep a list for your peace of mind and get help from other people during the process so that you're not relying just on your own power, because it's not going to work if you're going that, like, writing is a solitary journey and I can't talk to anyone ever.
Solitary journey. If writing were a solitary journey, I would have written like 1 chapter ever. I'm like, I need someone to help me and tell me to keep writing. So yeah, friends are good. You need to find a writing community. So you have beta readers, you've got writing friends, you got people you can talk about the, just the struggle of it all, even just so you can vent about it. And then, find a process that works for you. This goes for first drafts right down to your editing process. I know some writers do well, like with a spreadsheet with each scene and like notes, and I have tried that. And I think my brain was like, you do enough spreadsheets that work. If you make us do a spreadsheet now, we're just going to shut down. So maybe that'll work for you. Didn't work for me. It was an overload. And, some people are okay to just edit by the seat of their pants too. Everybody is different. So, and you'll continue to fine tune it. Once you find something that kind of works, it's going to get easier and easier every time you do an editing pass. So mostly about finding something that works for you. And that's the tea on tackling your edit. All links will be in the show notes, and you can reach us anytime at theteagrannies@gmail.com or follow us at the Tea Grannies Podcast on Instagram. Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It's time to put the kettle on. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Happy writing.